infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai,
Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. And on the top of 33, as you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
And we join in Shema on page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please be seated.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levabecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
We sing Micha Mocha on page 40.
Micha Mocha Bailim Adonai, Micha Mocha Neda Bakodesh. You turn. Micha Mocha Bailim Adonai, Micha Mocha Neda Bakodesh. Nora Tehilot Osefele, Nora Tehilot Osefele. Micha Mocha Bailim Adonai, Micha Mocha Neda Bakodesh, Neda Bakodesh.
So you might not have known this, but today is actually a Jewish holiday. Today is the holiday of Tu B'Av, and sometimes people think of Tu B'Av as being the Jewish Valentine's Day. Now, it's not exactly that. It's more about love and friendship. But it's important to have these kind of special days in our tradition because the truth is that we don't always talk about love in a Jewish context, even though it's strewn throughout our prayer service. And so this next prayer that we'll sing this evening on page 42, the Hebrew words say, Hashkivenu Adonai, God, spread a shelter of peace over us. But on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see an interpretation that says, let there just be love.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu Lishalom, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu Leshalom. V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. There be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Be our shelter from life's storms. Be our shelter from life's storms.
So we know that in Judaism, it is a tradition that every child is given not only their English name, the name by which their friends and their family know them, but also a Hebrew name. Now, sometimes this happens when they are born or 8 days after they're born. Sometimes you have to wait until just the right moment. Well, now is just the right moment for our friend Lev. So if we can invite Lev and his mom to come on up. And Rabbi Michael, can I ask you to do the heavy lifting? Even though it's extremely warm up here, but you still get to do the hard work anyway. Sorry. The big chair. So today, Lev is receiving his Hebrew name, but we've asked his mom to share just a few words about his name, and then we'll give him a little blessing.
Okay. Hi. So when I was completing the paperwork to adopt my second child, I was told that I would need to have a name for the child I would be adopting. And this was happening months before I would even be seeing any photos or being given any information about this person who would be my child. So I had to really think about the name. And once it was set, and I couldn't go to China and look at him and tell him, the immigration officers that, oh, I changed my mind because the name I had chosen didn't quite fit or how he looked, or it didn't fit his personality. So at the time I was completing the paperwork, it was early 2019, and there was, for various reasons, a huge amount of tension in this country that was affecting how many of us related to one another. And I was listening to podcasts by Preet Bharara on my way to and from work so that I wouldn't feel so anxious, and then I was avoiding the radio and social media platforms the rest of the day. And in the midst of this overwhelming time, this time when so many social norms had been disrupted, I was trying to find the name for someone who seemed at this point as mythical and as fantastic as a unicorn. I have a wonderful family, and I honestly could have named my son after any number of relatives who are gone, who I love deeply. But during this unsettling time, I thought a lot about two of my relatives who were the essence of graciousness and calm, my Aunt Loretta and my Uncle Joe. And I think if you'd asked me as a child who my nicest relatives were, there was a pretty good chance that I would have said Auntie Lo and Uncle Joe. I'd give a lot to hear Auntie Lo say to me when she called the house, "Hey babe, it's me, is your mom home?" Or offer me another stick of gum. I'd give a lot to have Uncle Joe swing open the front door and give us his big smile and let us all pile into the house for the afternoon. Or to give me a hug and tell me how Auntie Anne was doing anytime I stopped by National. These two people radiated kindness and calmness and warmth. And as a child, I couldn't have articulated this, but I was absolutely drawn to it. And it wasn't until I became much older that I realized what a gift it was to have Auntie Lo and Uncle Joe in my life. People who were able to pat down other people instead of riling them up just by being their gentle selves. So this is what I hope for my son, who I have named Love Joseph. I hope that by naming him after my Auntie Lo and my Uncle Joe, to give him some of the calm and grace and kindness that I was enveloped with every time I was with them. I hope that somehow by naming him after my aunt and uncle, that he will have some of their warmth and kindness. I hope that one day, if one of his nieces or nephews is living in a time that's causing people to be anxious or angry, that they can think of my son and remember a person in their life who is the essence of graciousness and calm. And for all of us, I wish and I hope that these people, like Auntie Lo and Uncle Joe, are never seen as mythical and fantastic as a unicorn. Thank you.
So, will you go stand by him? So usually we would just give Lev a blessing, but that was so beautiful, we decided this probably needs to be for both of you. So, can we wrap it around you? All right, so if you stand here. So in Jewish tradition, when we give a child their Hebrew name, part of what we talk about is the idea that we believe that any Jewish soul that's brought in the world can be the Messiah. But I feel like that speech is kind of saying the same thing, but with a much better word than Messiah. We pray that, Lev, whatever comes in your future, that you will absolutely be blessed by all of those beautiful words that your mother offered and in the memory of those who came before you. But so too, it's a tradition that we pray that you find three things, and we wish them not just for you, but for your whole family. We wish that you will find love, that you will know that whenever you have people around you who can bring you love, that you will never be alone. We pray that you will live a life of gemilut chasadim, of acts of loving kindness. And we pray that you will live a life of Torah, always learning whatever you do. So we'll offer you one final blessing.
Amen. May God bless you and watch over you. Amen. May God's light be made to shine upon you and guide you as you go on your way. Shalom. Amen. May God's countenance be lifted over you, and may you be given the greatest gift of all, wholeness, peace. Shalom.
We all say together.
Amen.
It was so beautiful. I need a minute.
You know, sometimes the prayers that come to us are not the prayers in the book. Sometimes they're just prayers that we offer from our hearts. And sometimes they're poetry. This next one we'll do on page 45 is just a poem that has become now a part of our liturgy. It's a way to be able to prepare us for tefillah. A thought has blown the marketplace away.
The thought has blown the marketplace away. There is a song on the wind and joy in the trees. Shabbat has arrived in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night, and eternity utters a day. Eternity utters a day. Yai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Yadi Tehilatecha. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Yadi Tehilatecha. Yai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai.
So to help us lead tefillah, a few of our upcoming B'nai Mitzvah students have offered that they would lend us a hand tonight. So if you're one of those students, come on up. Matthew, you too, you're not a bar mitzvah yet. Come on. You've still got 12 hours, man. And we'll ask everyone to please rise. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot,
ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומצהיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו בלי שני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
Please be seated. So we'll turn now to page 60, and we offer a prayer over our country, a prayer especially over Israel and all the world.
Shalom Ra Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Ra Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom rav Yisrael amcha tazim le'olam. Shalom rav Yisrael amcha tazim le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Ra Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom Ra Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam.
So at this point in our service, we flip forward to quite a few pages, to page 253. And we take a few moments to think of those in our community who are in need of healing. So if there was someone who you're thinking of at this time who could use our healing prayers and who would appreciate knowing their names were shared aloud here, I would invite you to share them this time. Thinking too of Arlene Alper. We're thinking of Lisi Weinstein, and for all those names that we're saying in our hearts on page 253, where we offer a healing prayer for them and for all of us.
Mi sheberach avotzeinu mekol habracha ve'imotzeinu. May the source source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Ose shalom bimroma. Ose shalom bimroma. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Alleluia. May the one who brings peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. Ose shalom bimroma. Ose shalom bimroma. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Uyase, uyase, uyase shalom. Alleluia. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down. May the one who makes peace bring peace down, bring peace down.
Thank you to all the awesome religious school students and teachers who I saw doing the motions in your seats. That was perfect. We'll teach the rest of you next time so you can also dance, but this was just a test. So many of you know that Rabbi Michael and I were on sabbatical in the month of July. But just because we were gone doesn't mean we weren't thinking about you. Actually, we thought about you a lot. Like every time something would come up in the news and we would think, ooh, if we were on the Bema, we would probably have to talk about that at services tonight. And July was a kind of exciting month in our nation, so there were many, many things that we could have talked about. Many of them, July was, such a terrible and horrible month. But a lot of the things that we thought we might have spoken about had we been on the Bema had to do with the separation of church and state. Now, don't worry, I'm sure there will be many more sermons to come about the separation of church and state, because that kind of stuff is going to keep happening. But the truth is that Separation of church and state is something that has been an issue really for a very long time in our country. I mean, the case that I remember the most, it was, I don't know, maybe 15 or so years ago, when it was all about the Ten Commandments and where the Ten Commandments could be, like in relation to a courthouse. And I remember at that time the discussion about the Ten Commandments was really interesting because so many of us do believe that the Ten Commandments are these foundational rules for society. We don't think of them as just being Jewish or just being Christian. We really often think of them as the laws that people should just follow if we are living together in a civilized society. So that makes it then all the more exciting when there comes a time when we actually do at least get to talk about the Ten Commandments officially from the Bema, because this week they are in our Torah portion. And I do just have to brag that for the first bar mitzvah of the year, Matthew's reading of the Ten Commandments is so awesome. You all should absolutely come or tune in tomorrow. It's actually like pretty remarkable the way that he is going to read these Ten Commandments, chant these Ten Commandments. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, though, well, last week, Rabbi Michael read from the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. Why would we be reading the Ten Commandments now? Seems like that should have come sooner, right? Was anyone thinking that? Okay, all right. Carla was thinking that. So if you were thinking that, you would be right, because we actually did read the Ten Commandments a long time ago in the story that you probably remember, because they made a lot of movies out of it. Most of them were terrible, but where Moses goes up the mountain and he receives the Ten Commandments from God, and then he comes down the mountain and he smashes them, right? And he's got to go up the mountain and get a whole other set of them. So that happened all the way back in the book of Exodus. This time, this is just a repeat of them. What you may not have known, though, is that the version of the Ten Commandments that we heard back in Exodus is not exactly the same version that we're going to hear tomorrow from Deuteronomy. Now, there's not that many differences. Like one of them, probably the most well-known one, is when we talk about Shabbat. One version says we should shamor, we should guard Shabbat. The other one says we should zachor, we should remember Shabbat. And there's a few other different tweaks in there about coveting and exactly what coveting means and just who and what you can or can't covet. It seems like it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but remember that the Torah, every single sentence, every single word, even every single letter and blank space, we are taught that there's a reason for it. So of all texts, for there to be discrepancies between the two versions of the Ten Commandments, it probably is something we should pay attention to. So there's a few different explanations about when it can be. The first version is like the intellectual version. This is our bibliocritical version, which says the Torah may have been written down by more than one person. And if it was written down by more than one person, then maybe the person who wrote it in Exodus and the person who wrote it in Deuteronomy were not the same person, and so one of them may have just made a few tweaks. That's answer number one. Answer number two is, if you remember that scene where again, Moses goes up the mountains, he takes the Ten Commandments, he smashes them, he goes up and gets a new set. Some people say, well, maybe actually God made some revisions up on the mountain. After seeing that Moses smashed the first one, maybe God made some changes to the second set, and that's why there are two versions. The third answer to this story, though, is the one that I think is the most interesting and has the best things to teach us. The third answer says, what if God actually only said one thing, but we all heard it differently? As if God somehow was able to speak with multiple voices at one time. And I realize that this sounds a little bit crazy, but I think there is a way to think about this. Wow, can I borrow your guitar? I was going to see if there was a moment of panic. Okay, so I'll be nice to it. Okay, so here's the thing. In music, oh, this is too hard. Can I just have you do it that way? All right, will you just hold it for me? All right, will you play a G, just the note? Perfect. Okay, so that's a G. Now will you play a G chord? Okay, so it's the same but not the same, right? If you were to sing that back to him, you would say, it's a little low, but you would say, right? That's a G. Yeah, okay, got it right. So it's the same whether you're hearing the note or the chord. We hear it and we feel it in our bodies in the same way, but the first one is just one note. The second one is all of these different notes put together that still make one beautiful sound. What if that's what God was doing? What if the way God talks to us is as if God is talking in musical chords and somehow is able to make just one sound that is really all of these different sounds beautifully put together? It would mean that somehow one sound, one teaching can be heard and understood by each of us in different ways. The reason I think this is so cool, not just because I think it would be awesome if God spoke like in music and guitar chords, but because there's this idea that says that maybe that means that every one critical teaching, even those teachings of the Ten Commandments that are so central and so important that people want to put them up outside the courthouse, that even a teaching like that can be heard and understood in different ways. It would mean that even our truthiest truths include many different ideas. And in the times we're living in now, this is something maybe we should all be a little more aware of. That as our country seems to be even more divided, that maybe this is the time that we need to recognize that even the biggest, most singular truths can have lots of different truths within them. My guess is that in the weeks and the months to come, you are going to hear a lot more sermons about the Supreme Court. You'll hear a lot more sermons about the separation of church and state, and you will hear many, many sermons that will sound like they are preaching multiple truths. Because the truth is that in this community, we need to be able to hear those things, those teachings that are most central to us, and recognize that even in one beautiful truth, there can be many, many ways of understanding. Maybe if we're able to do that, we will be able to hear all of the music that is in God's voice and all of the different ways that we can understand how to truly live in a beautiful and just society. Shabbat shalom. And so we'll ask you now, if you will, to please rise on page 282 as we join together in the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'atzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo samchakinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
And on 287,
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
So at this time, as we move towards the conclusion of our service, we recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days, and our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: Kay Braumeyer, Eugene Krause, Richard Rice, and Howard Smotkin. And we now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the Wall of Honor for perpetual memorial. Harvey Mickey Altman, Paul Ehrenberg, Louis Aronson, Sidney Bear Jr., Irvin Barker, Lester Bellner, Joseph Berger, Neil Norland Bernstein, Helene Bienenstock, Isidore Bistro, Deborah Berg, Eva Cohn, David Kotler, Beatrice Crone, Howard Custer, Gladys Frank Cutter, Joseph Angelo Davidson, Edward Dubinsky, Myra Friedman Dubinsky, Dr. Joseph Ephron, Goldie Bear Freund, Ada Amyton Garfinkel, Joseph Geller, Hilda Shukot Goldberg, Charles Goldman, Gabriel Gabe Gould, Robert J. Honig, Selma Honig, Nathan L. Horwitz, Rose Kruger, Eric Levi, Rebecca Levin, Alfred J. Levy, Sigmund Losses, Saul Ludmer, Ruth Margulis, Erna Wolf May, Bertha Mendelson, Dr. Gerald Newport, Harry Orchard, Paul Peltison, Tilly Pollock, Eleanor Rosenblum, Pearl Bell Rufa, Jacob Samuel Salader, Louise Sandler, Louis Silver, Nathan Silverman, Charles Stein, Henry Strauss, Aaron Tenenbaum, Emil Weil, Harry Zimmerman. So those names and the names we keep in our hearts, we join together in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha barechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom mimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we say, Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yimeru. Amen.
So we wish one last mazel tov in advance to Matthew and a mazel tov to the Silverman family. And then, do we have a surprise closing song? All right, a surprise closing song.
Surprise closing song.
Sweet as honey,
here we
sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
Asher Kiddushanu,
Asher
mitzvotav
kishanu
v'tzivanu,
b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
la'asok b'divrei Torah,
la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Sweet as honey,
sweet as
let
honey,
us soak it up,
sweet as
let
honey,
it all sink
sweet
in.
as honey on
Sweet
our
words
tongue.
of Torah,
Sweet as
let us
honey,
soak it up,
sweet as
let
honey,
it all sink
sweet as
in.
honey on
Sweet
our
words
tongue.
of Torah,
Sweet as
let
honey,
us soak it up,
sweet as
let
honey,
it all sink in.
sweet as honey on
Sweet
our
words
tongue.
of Torah,
Sweet as
let us
honey,
soak it up,
sweet as
let
honey,
it all sink in as honey on our tongue.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom
shalom.
and happy Tu B'Av. And then I was like, oh, you're plugged in all these places.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Yeah, nice. Awesome. Thank you, Carla.